Welcome to the board. Today, we're diving into a thrilling chess game filled with tactics and strategy. Whether you're here to learn or just enjoy, you're in for a great match. Let's get started. This position comes from one of the most common openings, 1e4 followed by e5 and then knight to f3. At this point, many less experienced players choose to play pawn to d6 instead of the more theoretical knight to c6. By doing so, they avoid well-studied lines like the Italian game in certain gambits. The move pawn to d6 is solid and straightforward. It reinforces the central pawn on Sa5, helps with piece development, and prepares to bring the dark squared bishop out to g4, aiming for a safe and flexible setup. The Danish Gambit may not be as sweet as a Danish pastry, but it's still sharp enough to roast your opponents. You begin by playing pawn to d4, striking at the center. This usually forces black to capture. Instead of recapturing, you sacrifice another pawn to speed up your development and launch an attack. Black often accepts again, and still, you don't recapture. Instead, you continue prioritizing rapid development. You even offer a third pawn on b2. After this, the aggressive intent behind the Danish Gambit becomes clear: fast piece activity and pressure before black can settle. Strictly speaking, this isn't the original Danish Gambit, which officially begins with pawn to d4 on move 2, instead of starting with knight to f3. However, the core concept remains the same. White willingly gives up pawns early on in exchange for rapid piece development and attacking chances. To better understand the idea, let's take a look at the traditional Danish Gambit and see how the themes carry over. The point of this gambit is to gain strong activity and open lines. The bishop is aiming down the diagonal, making it hard for black to develop their bishop to f8, since it has to protect the central pawn. The bishop on c4 is very active, and white is ready to bring the knight to f3 to increase the pressure, or in some lines, play queen to b3 to form a battery targeting the same pawn. Overall, white gets excellent piece activity and strong attacking chances. What often saves black in the Danish Gambit is the idea of developing the bishop with a check, gaining a tempo for development. On the next move, black can bring out the knight and prepare to castle, which helps them stay safe and avoid immediate trouble in the Danish Gambit. But now, let's return to our line. If you begin with knight to f3 and black replies with pawn to d6 before the gambit starts, you reach a very similar position. The key difference is that the pawn on d6 now blocks the bishop, so black can't easily develop it to deliver a check to your king. That means you've actually reached an improved version of the Danish Gambit. The Danish Gambit is already a sharp and aggressive opening, but in this refined version, the pressure on black becomes even more intense. The knight developed to f3 plays a crucial role, often heading to g5 or e5 to target the vulnerable f7 pawn, a key weakness and direct access point to the king. White builds momentum by coordinating the pieces for a powerful attack, often bringing the knight to g5 or queen to b3 to apply even more pressure, especially along the open f file. In this setup, black has very little room for error. One careless move can lead to a swift and overwhelming defeat. Let me show you a fun example from one of the main lines of this opening. In many cases, black refuses to accept the final pawn sacrifice, realizing that doing so would leave them far behind in development. Instead, they shan't try to develop or defend the f7 pawn, knowing it's a target. One move that feels safe for black is pawn to h6. This stops white from playing knight to g5, similar to how it's prevented in the fried liver attack, and it seems to secure the f7 pawn. But in reality, it's quite the opposite. White can launch a powerful attack by sacrificing the light-squared bishop with bishop takes f7. Black is forced to recapture, and at first glance it may seem like everything is fine, but then comes the stunning knight to e5, and the real attack begins. Here comes another check to the king, and the first question that might come up is, can black just capture the second knight? But the answer is no. Doing so would lose the queen due to a pin. So, the king is forced to move. In most cases, it retreats to e8, trying to return to safety, but that's exactly where the danger increases. After queen to h5, there's another check, and once the king moves again, queen to f7 ends the game. The queen is supported, and it's checkmate. This isn't just a cheap trick, it's a fully winning line. Black is completely helpless here. If the king tries to escape to the side instead, then knight to g6 delivers a fork, winning the rook and continuing white's attack. If black tries to avoid all that by stepping forward, the resulting line is incredibly sharp and absolutely fascinating. You continue the attack by playing queen to f3 with check. Now the king is forced to capture the knight. Even though the king is exposed in the center, it's not immediately easy to deliver checkmate. For example, moving the queen to f5 isn't possible because that square is covered by black's bishop. And if you try bishop to f4, which looks tempting, the king can simply retreat, first to e6 and possibly back to safety. So that line doesn't lead to a quick win either. What actually wins for white here is the move queen to f7, a very precise and powerful idea. It controls all the key escape squares, so the black king can no longer retreat. Now white is ready to continue the attack with bishop to f4 or pawn to f4, cutting off any way back for the king. Black is completely exposed and has no real defense. Let's say black tries knight to f6. Then white plays pawn to f4, directly attacking the king. As the king continues trying to escape by capturing material, white calmly develops with knight to c3, both bringing a piece into play and delivering a check. The king moves again, and now comes another beautiful sacrifice to break things open even further. Once again, the black king might be looking for a way to retreat, so white plays bishop to e3. This not only blocks any escape routes, but also pushes the king even deeper into white's territory. After the king captures, white immediately shuts the door by playing queen to c4, cutting off the king's path back and tightening the net. Now the threat of knight to d1 becomes even stronger, bringing white closer to a final checkmate. It's a truly remarkable position. Black's king is aimlessly drifting across the board, while the rest of their pieces seem disconnected and passive. At this point, black is desperately trying to stop the threat of checkmate by knight to d1, with the only real defense being bishop to g4. But even then, white has a brilliant way to finish things. Rook to d1. It looks like a sacrifice, but it's all part of the plan. Once the rook is captured, the knight lands on d1 anyway, delivering a beautiful and final checkmate. Despite how wild it seems, this is actually a realistic line that could happen in a real game, and it leaves a lasting impression. Interestingly, the same tactical themes can show up in other versions of this opening as well. For instance, if black grabs the pawn on b2 and you recapture, the game often heads into familiar attacking territory. From there, black might try to develop with a move like knight to f6, aiming for solid piece activity. But this can backfire quickly. White's pieces can spring forward, once again focusing pressure on the weak f7 pawn, which is often the centerpiece of early attacks. With well-coordinated development and control of key lines, white can create serious problems for black in just a few moves. In an effort to relieve the pressure on the vulnerable f7 pawn, black might try a more cautious approach by playing bishop to g4, pinning your knight and hoping to stop it from joining the attack. However, even this defensive idea doesn't fully hold up. White can still go for the classic tactical shot. Bishop captures on f7, forcing the black king into the open. Then comes knight to a5, a surprising and creative follow-up. At first glance, it may seem reckless, but it fits perfectly within white's attacking strategy and once again puts black under serious pressure. At first glance, it seems like you're simply ignoring the pin and sacrificing a knight. But in reality, it's a calculated tactic. The knight can't actually be taken, because doing so would immediately lose the queen due to the pin. It's a surprising and creative combination, something your opponent is very unlikely to see coming. Now the king is forced to move since it's in check, and after that, you calmly retreat your bishop. While this doesn't lead to an immediate checkmate, it gives you a significant long-term advantage. The key detail is that the king has moved and can no longer castle, leaving it exposed in the center. From here, you can gradually build your position, prepare to play pawn to e5, activate your pieces, and launch a powerful attack. With black's king stuck in the open and your development far ahead, the position is highly favorable and likely winning with accurate play.